Welcome, and we're so glad you're here. Last session, you guys are hardy folks, 4 p.m. on the Thursday. My name's Keith Groom. I'm out of Seattle. I've been with AWS 8.5 years, and I lead our worldwide partner strategy for Microsoft and VMware and container workloads, helping to work with our product teams and our sales teams to build sales plays and go-to-market strategies for partners. And Nick?
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Hi, everybody. Echo those sentiments. Thanks for coming. Yeah, Nick O'Brien. I have a word salad of a job title there, but in a nutshell, I work on the MAP program, and I'm there to sort of like help partners use the MAP for their migration and modernization projects. Okay. So we thought in order to sort of try and tailor this as we were going through the presentation, it'd be good if we got to know you. No high tech at all being used, but a simple show of hands. So we just wanted to sort of like ask you a few questions, get a feel for where you are in your journey with us and your sort of roles in the organization. So I'll kick off with the first question, which is really about your role. So let's just start with the leaders in the organization. Have we got any founders, directors, or owners of businesses here? Awesome, very important people. Then let's move through to sort of like the people on the alliance side. They're often one of our primary stakeholders, so people working in alliances. Excellent, yeah, few on that side. Now moving to sort of commercial side, marketing, biz dev, sales. Awesome, yeah, okay, we've got a nice blend of people here. And then maybe you talk about like the delivery side, technical, pre-sales, project management. Awesome, full house.
We have something for all of you.
Yes, excellent, cool. You're going to ask the next question then?
Yes. Oh, I am. What's your experience with AWS? 0 to 1 year. Who is 0 to 1 year? Okay.
Good.
2 to 4 years? Okay. 4 years plus? All right. So we've got a pretty experienced crowd in here. Fantastic.
It's good to see. And then we got a similar sort of question just about your domain knowledge around migrations and modernization. So we just wanted to get a feel for how many projects you've been exposed to as well. It'll probably reflect a similar pattern to the previous question, but just to know how many people have, say, done, thank you, over 10 projects, if you can hear me. Okay, awesome, that is good. And then maybe say 5 to 10, that sort of category. Yep, okay, a few there, and then under 5 or just not, okay, all right, so again, similar sort of split, bit more towards the tenured end, I'd say.
That's great.
Cool.
Okay, I think that's where I will take over. We're going to start with really 3 purposes of this session. We're going to talk about the market opportunity for migrating and modernizing, and I'm going to give you some perspective how we're thinking about the market opportunity. Then we're going to go into what's our 2025 critical priorities with partners to drive this domain area and for you to drive and monetize and make money. And then we're going to talk about this concept of the partner flywheel, which is about what are those key elements of practice building and execution that really helps identify what's our best partners doing, what does success look like from our top partners, and we're going to review some of those best practices that we see. So let's get started. I love to talk about this concept because right now worldwide GDP is going to grow about 3% in most areas of the world. Some countries are declining, but cloud adoption is growing 20% a year for the next 3 years, according to the analyst forecast. And this is the rough breakdown of where the growth is going to come from in IaaS and SaaS and PaaS. This is your investment thesis to your board, to your owner of your company, around why you should invest in cloud. It's among the fastest growing segments of the market. And we have some really interesting dynamics happening that I'm going to talk about that are, I'll call them not anti-cloud, but they are, hey, we should invest more in private cloud. Obviously, we're AWS, we're all in on public cloud, but the growth rates are undeniable of what they unlock. Now, one of our important priorities is VMware. How many of you had customers experience price increases this year, VMware renewals? How many of you had customers that expressed concerns about VMware pricing or subscriptions? It's been a huge opportunity this year, lots of disruption in the market. And guess what? Disruption is not new. IT vendors have been creating scenarios where IT has to adapt unanticipated challenges in the year. But the best partners learn to thrive in this. And right now, there's about a $51 billion TAS that we've identified. It's about 145,000 customers that are interested or we can target to move to AWS that are on VMware today. But what's interesting about this, what's changed in the dynamics and the sentiment, the customer sentiment is shifting. 73% of customers in a recent survey said, we're considering alternatives to VMware on-prem. And for us, we obviously are today really focused on moving customers from on-prem off VMware into cloud native. And that's a huge opportunity for partners to monetize. And as we think about, we don't care how the customer gets to AWS, the workload is a win. Whether they move into EC2 or containers, or they move using Nutanix clusters, we're kind of okay with any of those pathways as long as they're moving into the cloud. And I tell you, we're only about 10% penetrated. Our current pipeline is about 10% of this TAS right now. So there's a lot of opportunity still ahead of us. And we found that the deals are moving a little bit slower than we anticipated, quite frankly. Now, with that, I'm very excited to share with you, if you didn't see the announcement earlier, we will be launching Amazon Elastic VMware Service. So what is this? This is a bare metal instance that a customer will be able to BYOL a standard VCF license to AWS. So we're building a special instance type. We have to do some special networking configuration so that VCF software can run natively on this instance type. So why are we doing this? Well, you know we had VMware Cloud on AWS, but that was a fully managed solution. We have decided with this offering to make it a self-managed solution, giving customers and partners full choice and control over the instance, which means you can build your own services on top of this, build your own managed services on top of this. And the way I'd ask you to think about it is, as you're working with on-premise VMware customers, what we want to talk about is move what you can to native services. What you can't or don't want to move, you'll now have an option to move it into EVS. And they'll use the standard VMware software to do that. So we've been at a competitive disadvantage for a while now. The last 4 or 5 months, we've been aggressively building this service. It's going to go GA sometime around Q2 of 2025. So stay tuned for more information on this, but know that we will have an offering, BYOL, of VMware licenses to AWS with EVS. So very excited, and again, this will complement your to native migration offering. Now, the final part of kind of this market opportunity is what's driving this cloud growth is the fact that customers want to unblock or unlock the EBITDA sitting within their organization. And then you do that through cost savings, through innovation, through agility. And so cloud is the key driver for companies looking at how to improve their EBITDA. And so again, these are all factors related to why customers are adopting the cloud, and we want to help you build the right set of service offerings so you can monetize this market opportunity. Now, then the question is, so where should you focus? There's a lot of things you can do with AWS today, data and Gen AI and storage and migrations and Connect. And I would encourage you, if you're newer to AWS, pick a lane. Pick 2 or 3 things that you can do well, that you can do repeatedly, and that you can build skills around so you can build that experience so that you can move into more sophisticated services. And I just give you a quick short story. I had a partner that when they started working with us, their primary work was migrating Windows servers to AWS. And they were doing so much of that Windows migrations, they ultimately had so many customers that they had all this data on AWS. And now the partner came to me and said, Keith, I need to go build a data practice. I don't know how to do this today. So then we went from learning how to do migrations of Microsoft and standard VMware workloads to now I got to build a data practice because I moved all these customers sitting on AWS. And that was part of his maturity curve, which opened up this opportunity to enable him to monetize new ways on AWS. But he didn't start out by building a data zone and data lakes, but it took him time to learn about AWS. And so in your maturity curve, he's going to talk about the flywheel. This is how you can think about what are your future opportunities, but don't do everything at once. Find out where you want to start, build your capability and expertise in an area, and then use that to expand into additional areas. Now, I'm going to quickly highlight how we think about our priorities for 2025. The first and foremost is we have to continue to win new workloads and new customers to the cloud. Again, 80% of the world is still on premise. That's our mental model, okay? So in the vein of that, what does that look like? That looks like continuing to drive data center exits, continue to drive hosting companies, continue to target ISVs for ISV transformation on AWS. These are our three biggest market segments that we're winning migrations. And what that looks like, the use cases are legacy Linux, legacy Windows, lots of Windows, VMware. It's moving SQL Server, Oracle to AWS. Core enterprise apps. I mean, these are areas that continue to be the #1 growth drivers of revenue on AWS. They're our #1 growth drivers today still. And this unlocks things of like doing data and analytics on AWS, unlocks your ability to drive Gen AI adoption. But the second pillar of this is we have a $100 billion business today, or run rate business of AWS. And guess what? How many of those customers do you think are modernized? Right? What percentage? It's like 30% maybe, 25 to 30% maybe. So we have 75% of our existing AWS customers, they're not optimized and they're not modernized. When I say not modernized, I mean they're not using our services like containers and Lambda and our cloud native databases, right? So our more advanced services, they're maybe not using Gen AI. And so there's also this big business opportunity for you guys to go to, obviously new, but go to these existing AWS customers and target them for optimization, monetization. I had a simple example. I had a partner who had 250 SQL Server customers running on AWS that they managed through their managed service platform. I said, have you ever had a conversation about moving those customers to Postgres? We've never thought about that. That's a good idea, right? And why would you want to do that? Because that customer can get significant cost savings getting off SQL Server. They're already running on AWS. You can use our assessment tools to convert those databases to Postgres or Aurora, better agility, better performance at a lower cost, right? And so there's lots of ways to monetize existing customers, and I just got a couple of examples on the window here. And all of this helps that customer be ready and able to adopt Gen AI more effectively at a higher adoption rate. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick to take us to the next section.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith. So the title of the presentation is How Can You Capitalize on the Opportunity? And when we put those statistics up about the market growth, you could be saying, oh, that's all well and good for you, AWS, but how do I make money out of it? And that's really what the purpose of this session is. Not about us, it's about yourselves. And what that means is, like, how do I build a repeatable engine in my business that predictably brings new customers and new logos to me? How do I continuously do a really good job in terms of what I deliver with them so they have a really good experience? How do I build a little bit more trust with the account reps inside AWS as well so I can get some referrals? How do I do all of those things? And typically, a lot of the time when we're having that type of conversation, the conversation moves on to what leads are AWS going to bring to the partner. That's usually where it goes, and we squirm a little bit uncomfortably in our seats as that conversation sort of like kicks off. But we want to address it heads on, right? And what we wanted to say is, look, I mean, the basic reality is, as Ruben was saying in her keynote, we've got like 150,000 partners and there's like 3 cloud providers, right? So, it's not like it's easy for us to like constantly farm out leads. And one of the things, and I don't know if you spend much time in the expo hall, but when I would go in there and I sort of like just walk around, sort of take it in, the one sort of phrase that sticks in my mind is that old Arnold Palmer line about golfer, which is like the harder I work, the harder I practice. I should get it right. The harder I practice, the luckier I get. And when I walk around that room, I was there recently, and coming along, saw this pretty cool drone. It's like, oh, that looks I'd quite like one of those. And then as I sort of like turned, this lady sort of like hands me a raffle ticket and she says, would you like to win it? I'm going, yeah, I would actually. And I said, how long have I got to wait? And she says, 10 minutes. I think I can hang around 10 minutes. And then I said, why is that 10 minutes? She said, well, this guy does a little presentation. It's mobbed, by the way. It's about 10 deep. And we're all stood there with our raffle tickets in our hand. We wait our 10 minutes. Someone wins it. Off they go. I was a bit worried about if I did win it. I didn't, how I'd get it home. But nevertheless, I just thought, think about all the components that must have taken place there. They obviously thought about the right gift. They got these people in from agency to hand the tickets out. They printed the tickets. They got the guy who actually was doing the presentation on a regular basis to make it really punchy and engaging and things like that. They tried hard, they worked hard, and they were full. They were harvesting leads. They were, like I say, any one time it looked like there was 100 people. You walk a little bit further, and then you see another stand is empty, or it's got like a plastic pen and a couple of squeegees, and you think, well, how hard did they try? And they've got no one in front of them. And that's what I was thinking about, like, in terms of the flywheel concept that we want to sort of like discuss with you, is that it is about the harder that you work, the luckier you get in terms of the business. And we're privileged from our perspective that we can look at a lot of different partners. And, Kalen, they were on the stage yesterday, Migration Partner of the Year, grows from like 100 people to 600 people. They have highly effective flywheels running in their business. And that's really what we wanted to do, was use that as a framework to discuss how we think partners can add more and more value and help them be successful as their business grows. And our whole idea is like, would start for like, people who are coming in, entry, just starting going with us and then get more sophisticated. We'll go through that 3 times. That's what we're going to do. So kind of like connected with the question about, how do you win? You have to differentiate, right? Like, we really appreciate that it's a crowded market, and like in any one particular customer, there's going to be many other partners all playing in that area. And one of the things that we were doing is you can sort of do some analysis there that we had from one of the research analysts, average of 7 partners. I suspect it's a lot higher in enterprise accounts. But the other one that was interesting, 28 different opportunities during that engagement before a decision's made to do a fantastic job or not so good job. And that's really, again, where we differentiate. We want to sort of talk about all the things that we can bring that can help layer on and improve that execution with you. And the second thing that was really struck me is a separate piece of advice, analysis, and it was saying about not just is it super important to have the right products and services, but the emphasis on the experience, the buying experience, is like in 80% of the case equally essential, which I found quite surprising. And then, are we doing a great job? Well, it says that 56% of the time we're actually repeating. The customers feel like they're having to repeat themselves to us. And I've been in that position working at AWS. We had a big French energy firm, thousands of servers. They wanted to do a scan, get the total cost of ownership, rolled out a whole load of tooling, put that in place, came back, did that analysis with the customer. They're quite keen. Then they said, what do they want to do in particular was look at like the operating system level, or the versions of all the different software in the stack across all these things. They wanted to see if they were in support or out of support. And what did we say? The tool that we did the first exercise with doesn't capture that data, so now they're going to have to run the entire thing again. And that's going to be a poor experience. So wanted to come back to this idea that as the flywheel develops and you build these skills up and understanding about tools and what's available, and you ask all those early questions, you would indeed improve your experiences, or the customers' experiences with yourself. So I want to move on to another thing about, I've gone 2 clicks. I didn't want to do that. Can I go back?
Let's see.
Here we go.
It goes.
So here's a guy who knows a little thing or two about making money. And you hear us talk a lot about flywheels. For those that are really tenured in the room, you probably may be a little bit bored, but I just want to quickly run through this and make it absolutely crystal clear what we're referring to. Matt Garman brought it up when he was with Ruba yesterday. And one of the things, this quote to me encapsulates it. It's quite a complex sentence. What he says is, we don't make money when we sell things. We make money when we help customers make purchase decisions. It's almost like deliberately misleading that, because of course you make money when you sell things. You put something in front of you, you collect money, you've made money. That's understandable. But what Jeff is really trying to emphasize is actually where you repeatedly make money, is that when you build an environment where people trust you, they come to you and they repeatedly purchase from you. And that's what he's trying to emphasize in this quote, which is like, what is the mental model and what is the work that we need to do? Do we need to improve our transaction systems, or do we have to improve all the portfolios of things that go with that in terms of making a decision? So when he was developing it in Amazon, so before we go and talk about AWS and yourselves, just to sort of like emphasize the point here, is he was saying, within my customers, there are 3 universal truths. He says that, we will never want less choice when we're making our mind up. We'll never want to pay more if we need to, and we'll never want it slower. right? We'll always want it as fast as we can get it. So with that, what he does is he builds his mental model and his flywheel, which is like we need to get the selection. As we know, we start with books and DVDs, and then that, with a wide selection, the customers, have an improved experience, drives more traffic. Traffic attracts more sellers because sellers want to be in places where things are sold, which indeed adds to the selection. As you keep going round and round, what you then start seeing is that you can get your cost structure down, and obviously if you get your cost structure down, you can pass that on to your customers, and guess what? That improves the customer experience. So we wanted to sort of like take that and then convert it into how migrate and modernize and the sort of flywheels that you could develop. So in terms of how we wanted to structure it, we're kind of structuring it in a similar line. This is what happens when you have about 10 hours to fly from London. You play around with PowerPoint. Really what we want to do is just like, you may be familiar with this, if you listen to a lot of presentations from us in the partner world, you'll hear we talk about build, market, sell and grow. They're the sort of 4 steps that we feel our partners go through in terms of their experience with us. But I just wanted to make that language a little bit more clearer in terms of the objective around migration and modernization projects and what we think you're trying to do. So we know, as Keith was talking about choosing a lane and building out that offering and capability. That isn't just simply a case of just simply dreaming something up. You need to have like material, collateral, video assets, brochures, often slideware. You need to move that into packaged offerings. Then there needs to be clear understanding within your sales teams about the outcomes that give. Price transparency as well. So we know that in itself takes a degree of work. You move through that and then you're going into the go-to-market, and that's where we're starting to go into like, how do those campaigns run? What sort of like processes have you got behind that? How does that hand off between different parts of your organization? And then indeed starting to work with our teams. Many of you, particularly the more tenured, will be well aware about how we use ACE. I don't know if many of you are aware about the fact that we've started introducing Slack connections into ACE, so you can actually start requesting a private communication with sellers. We want to improve that so it's more of a digital experience as well. So things like that are coming along. We then know that whenever we get into a sales situation, we have to overcome certain objections, and each individual situation can sometimes present fresh challenges. So again, we want to give you armed with techniques that you can use to overcome those objections and get people to make decisions. And then, like I say, all of those 4 steps don't count for anything if it then doesn't come to the delivery and that working smoothly. So again, we have stuff there that we want to help you with and make sure that you're familiar with and you've got access to, so that you're not having to learn things and do things for the first time. So that's really how we wanted to convert that concept of the flywheel into something which is relevant for you. I go a little bit more and then I pass back to Keith. So what we've got is 3 simple visual analogies really to talk about where you are in your journey. So for those that right at the beginning, what we want to see is that, to characterize what we see with people in this situation is they're a fiercely ambitious group. They are familiar with the fact that they've got to be front of house and often working in the kitchen as well. They've usually chosen something which is highly specialized, and invariably they've got a fairly lean organization and they come in at a price competitive point. They're specialists, they're commercially attractive, they're hunting for new business, and they're ambitious. And they're turning to us and saying, like, what are the customer challenges that we can connect with, and what can you give me to go after? So I'm going to pass that to Keith to sort of like talk through that piece.
Yeah. So I think, this is not lost on all of you. This is pretty common, right? What we see, particularly around migrations, is big drivers lowering their costs. They get a compelling event like a data center renewal, hardware refresh. They want to move to digital native. They got line of business owners that say, hey, this application needs to scale and grow. We got to acquire more users, right? So that's part of that digital native. And the companies, they've all got budget this year to drive Gen AI projects. They're trying to find how they can unlock the data in the organization. They want to drive Gen AI. And, Microsoft and VMware and Oracle are examples of trying to avoid that vendor lock-in, right? That technical debt. How can we eliminate that? So lots of objectives, and it's really hard. And particularly around the space of migrating and modernizing workloads, often we hear is, where do I start? What can I move? How do I move it? And how and what to modernize? We talk to partners and partners, and I love this analogy with one partner. He's like, I've done 100 migrations this year. And he said the customer might do 2 or 3 in their career. So think of that experience level, right, of a partner. If you've done 10 migrations with AWS, the customers you're working with have probably never done 1, or you're working with them on their very first one. So they don't know the answers to these questions of where to get started, how to get started, what to move, what order. It's very confusing and very challenging. This is why we need partners. And as we think about trying to unpack this world of migrating workloads to AWS, there's one truth that's emerged over the last 5-7 years. And when I started with the company, we basically had no assessment practice. We had the most rudimentary assessment approach, and it was not good. And we launched this program called the OLA, the Optimized Licensing Assessment Program. Effectively, it's a cloud assessment for AWS. When we first launched this, we launched it because we needed something to compete against Microsoft. And we were using a tool at the time called VMware, which Microsoft had since bought. And basically we'd use the tool to inventory how many, that on-premise estate. We'd combine that with the licensing analysis, and we were looking for ways to optimize and reduce that Microsoft licensing spend through that assessment process. And that has since grown and been incredibly effective for us, because we are trying to move workloads from on-prem. We're trying to do 2 things. One is optimize the instance size and types, right? We want to consolidate. If you've got 100 servers on-prem, we want to maybe only need to run 20 in the cloud. We also want to optimize licensing, VMware, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, others, so that you're, again, reducing spend. Microsoft does not want to reduce customers' license counts. They don't want to lose their licensing spend. So we have a totally different objective with our assessment motion. Their assessment motion is primarily an audit compliance motion. Ours is a performance, cost reduction, agility kind of approach. So if you're not doing an OLA, if you don't have a cloud assessment, work with us. We have what's called the OLA onboarding program, and we can help you build an OLA offering. And it's true that our data is unambiguously clear. The stronger your assessment capability, the faster your migrations, the higher close rate you will have, and you'll perform lower cost migrations. So we've built this standardized assessment approach across all of these workloads you see on the screen, and we have more. And this can be used with our native tools or third-party ISV tools like CAS software and other ISVs. And the idea is that you're getting to a standardized deliverable to the customer on your paper. So you take the inputs of what's the customer's business driver, inventory and performance data, licensing data, using tooling, you do some level of analysis. Partner adds their own intelligence and analysis to that, things like recommended instance sizes and types for the workload, and it creates a customer-facing assessment recommendation. Then you combine that with a migration SOW. This process is tried and true. We're going to do 10,000 of these, something like that, this year at AWS. This is one of the most powerful drivers of new business at AWS today. If you don't have a cloud assessment offering, you're behind the 8 ball. This is what's driving top of funnel, pipeline, new business. And what's also happened is you got to think of the assessment in stages. And I'll give you a quick example. You do an inventory of their estate, you discover they have 100 SQL Server databases. What you can do as part of that assessment is go run our schema conversion tool. Now that you know how much SQL Server database they have, schema conversion tool does an assessment of the compatibility of SQL Server to move it to Postgres. If it turns out it's 80-90% compatible, that's a much lower a work effort for you to modernize SQL Server to Postgres. You could put that into your assessment recommendations. We could either move you to EC2 on AWS, or we could actually move you to Postgres and eliminate that SQL Server license cost. But that's like a secondary assessment after you've done that foundational assessment. And again, you can do this with modernization. If they have on-premise container environments, you could add a container assessment as part of this broader inventory discovery. And so we've really built this framework for you to enable you to go have better conversations with customers that helps you better scope of migration wave planning so that we can achieve those customer outcomes more quickly. And the process is pretty straightforward, right? You probably understand this, right? We do business discovery with the customer, we scope the opportunity, deploy tool, collect data, do analysis, and then create a deliverable. It's very important you standardize this approach. If I could offer one piece of advice here, is standardize your assessment delivery. I've seen organizations where it's a part-time job with a solution architect. I've seen deliveries disconnected from the pre-sales, and you produce the assessment deliverable for the customer, but the SOW for the migration takes 3 weeks. Bad experience for a customer. So think about your company's process. This is a best practice of what a process should look like, and we encourage you to think about and look at what your organization does. We have, again, this program called the Partner OLA Certification. You can work through your PDM. You can sign up through the APN portal, but we have a process to train you, enable you, and help you develop your own assessment offering and capability, and it works. We have the data. It will accelerate your migrations, help you drive revenue faster, and you'll drive better customer outcomes at a lower cost. And with that,
Yes.
I'm back to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to summarize that for a moment. I mean, first of all, I just love the fact that there's a portfolio. You can get good at one and then you can sort of advance and take into different areas as well. I think that offers so much. What strikes me is Keith speaking, and when you hear that crazy number like 10,000 OLAs, I was with a partner last night. They were benchmarking themselves. They're in a room and they were discussing how many partners do. 30 or 40, I think was seen as like a good number a year. Sounds like a lot. One guy I think said they did over 100 or something crazy. Like, I go back to that sort of that expo moment. It's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be in control of, masters of your own destiny, in control, and then creating a business like that? Or do you want to be with your plastic pens asking for leads? It really is like something like this, for those that are starting out, it really gives you that platform to like go after it and start building that up. And you know, what I was thinking as Keith is also speaking is there's a whole load of complementary things that are happening there as well, where you're actually building up more expertise. And it is a little bit like driving a car. It feels like quite difficult when you initially get started, but actually once you've passed your test, you're flying, metaphorically. But you do have to start learning some of our other systems like the ACE entry. You do get an opportunity to start working with more than one tool and like looking at which different tools are available. Keith didn't mention that we fund the OLA. And that's another super important thing. So one of the things that changes for the tenured people in the room would say, right, okay, I've been working with AWS for a lot. They put a lot of capital into getting customers to make decisions. By us saying we will pay the partner to undertake the work, then what we're doing is we're removing some of the sort of like the headaches and bumps that a customer has in their P&L where they might want to do something, but they don't want to do it because of like financial constraints. So understanding that mechanism, and you'll see it again and again in all of our programs, is absolutely critical. It will feel a bit unusual. It's like some companies don't have, like their finance department says, hang on a minute, normally it's our customers that pay us, not our vendor. Or the commission team say, hang on a minute, we don't pay commission for when it comes through the vendor and not the customer themselves. So sometimes you have to sort of like fix these things in order to remove the friction in the business. So
I can't believe, Nick, I didn't tell them that we'll pay them to go do this. So if you have a competency, there's actually cash for you to go perform OLAs. Can't believe I didn't say that. So my apologies.
Well, when you jumped out of your seat, I thought, hang on. But what I'm trying to say is like it's super important that you build that muscle as well, okay? Because you have to. Sometimes you can operate in different countries. I'm from the UK, and like that's a consideration operating in EMEA that you've got to have the euro or the sterling. On top of that, as partners really start working through their muscle as well, is that, we have MDF, we co-invest in the marketing. Some partners utilize that well, some less so, but it's available. And it also gives a springboard to go into other areas, like the OLA can then open up. Do we run a proof of concept? Do we run another migration, start working with other programs? So that's what we really want to do, is just like the OLA becomes the foundational. It's not the only one. Heard a partner recently say that they use the well-architected reviews. That's their flywheel. They do 300 at peak different customer engagements a year using well-architected reviews. That's their way that they want to ingest new customers and have new relationships. So there's different mechanisms than people use, but they definitely build that into their sales plays. Okay, so we said we're going to go through the gears. That was the first level, the OLA. And yeah, for sure, people can really get that running. They can celebrate their success. They will be starting to build their relationship with our sellers. Those sellers can sometimes move into other teams. They might start in SMB and go into ISV or even enterprise accounts. So they can start like building relationships with people that, build their careers with us. But typically what we see is that once a partner is successful with the OLA, then they want to move up. They want to get into larger projects. These are relatively short time-boxed exercise. And with the technical people that they have, they want to be doing more sophisticated stuff. So those people are hungry to develop and use new cloud-native technologies. So they're pushing that internally, that they want to do that. And obviously the business dynamics means that people want to have longer projects as well as larger projects. And they also want to start opening up recurring billing as well, so they can sort of build some sort of security into their business as well. So we're going to go back to Keith and sort of say, well, how would you move on from an OLA? Where would you go next?
Well, let's see what the slide tells us. I'm not really sure. I don't remember what we had. We're going to move to ISV software solutions. One of the things we've done this year is we're making available to partners a suite of ISV software licenses at no cost. Now, you do have to be a migration competency partner to be eligible for these no-cost licenses. But we created this program because, let's admit, our tooling will only get us so far, our native tooling, right? And so there's particular capabilities that we don't have natively on AWS, and we really need ISV solutions to fill in the gaps of some of our services. And so across this range of assessment, migration, and modernization software, we've partnered with these ISVs. We have one of them in room, Cast Software, if you want to meet Cast. And they all have some similar capabilities, but they've also got some really unique differentiators between them. And we're not going to say which one's best. We're not in the business of, we're back to the flywheel of Bezos, which is our job is to provide choice and flexibility. So I'd encourage you to engage with us to learn more about these ISVs and how they can help accelerate your business. Because particularly on the migrate side, they can move really fast because you're using automation to draw the migration of those VMs. And if you've got an engineering and technical team who is to manually configure control towers, and you may not have a level of automation or sophistication in actually setting up the workloads, then using some of these tools might be a solution for you. In other cases, you have customers who need to move really, really quickly, and sometimes we don't have enough people and bodies to throw at it, and we can use a software-led migration. And then we've also got a couple that we're using for our managed services platform, so that these are so you can operate and manage your AWS environment either on behalf of a customer, right? Well, these would be you guys managing on behalf of a customer, or customers could adopt these platforms. And these are really well built and designed to operate on AWS. That is the managed services platform. So we're funding these licenses. The program is valid through 2025. You must be a migration competency partner. There's an approval request process. More information is on the partner portal. If you go to the migration modernization COE in the partner portal, you can find more details about this program.
We got that link at the end.
Oh, you have it at the link. That's right. We do have it at the end. This is just a high-level view of kind of the matrix about some of the capabilities across the tooling. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what all of this sort of looks like, but we have some of these are specifically assessment-only pieces of software. Some are migration and assessment component. And again, we encourage you to do your own due diligence around this. But it's a great program. It's available to you today, and I encourage you to use it.
Cool. And again, I just wanted to add a little bit more programmatic color to that. So that's a motion in terms of like a technical approach, deploying that tooling. Obviously, you've now got an expanded group of different software vendors that you can start building your experience with and adding more value to the customer's decision making. And obviously, as you saw that as well, what Keith was showing in that slide, in that visual image, is that accesses different parts of this. So it's gone beyond the assess, going right into what we call the assess and mobilize, migrate, modernize, and managed as well. So, it gives you much more support for your engagements with customers. The other things that happen in the way that that's actually just facilitated, it gives you a bit of an exposure into how it works with Marketplace, which again opens up a new conversation with the customer. And it does also kind of connect with the earlier lessons. And, as you're building out those initial stories and you're sort of like submitting them and then doing the competency, you then see the value back because then you're getting exclusive. Right, I'd be interested to know how many migration competency partner people we've got. One, okay. So I would say that's probably about, I'd say about like a quarter. So I think we've got about 90,000 partners on the consulting side. And I would say it's probably less than 1/3% that have the migration competency. So just give you a sort of scale there. So actually we're really well represented in the room, but it gives you a sense of like, that is already quite a select group. And this is where we try and say thank you for putting the effort in and collecting those stories and submitting that work. We know it does take time, but we want to give you some benefits from that, from being able to sort of like establish your credentials. This is one. Another one is actually the fact that we increase our investments into MDF as well. That's another benefit that you get. And I'm going to move on and talk about MAP in a minute. And that's like another world of benefits that are also available for migration competency partners. The other thing I just wanted to sort of like connect with as well is, are many people familiar with the customer engagement incentive? Is anyone maximizing on that? So that's quite low, right? So this again is another part, and this is what I wanted to sort of like share with you, is that we've built out commercial constructs which help incentivize you to win business in greenfield accounts. It's good to be in a greenfield account. You're the first ones in there, and you've got like the ability to sort of like shape the future direction of the customer. It's great for us as well because it like takes us into new markets. But what's really important is that the customer engagement incentive is designed to offset your pre-sales costs. Going after greenfield accounts is more expensive. They take longer to make decisions, and someone's already established on the platform. But that's a way in which we will financially support you in those endeavors. So I really encourage you to have a look at that. Some partners are doing a great job with that, and they're building up quite big sales teams on the back of the fact that it's co-funded by AWS. So please have a look at that. It's a way in which will take some of the cost out of your business and help you start like winning new business as well. So wanted to add that because that comes back to the flywheel and about more layers, more sophistication, more ways in which you can actually win profitable business. Okay. We said like we were going to do 3 waves. This is my final one to the end. I don't know if you're fed up of food being in Vegas for a week. The piece of the resistance. We wanted to sort of like now talk about what happens when partners bring all that together. When they really are now sort of like, these are the partners I'm describing now, the ones that, we see on the stage yesterday, like the Kalen with like the Migration Partner of the Year. They are now like really into like much wider scope. Give you an example. We have like an airline customer that has gone through tens of millions of growth in terms of revenue with us. They've done about 30 plus large migrations with us. They've done it with about 14 different partners as well. But these are partners that are executing across a landscape of like 1,300 enterprise applications, right? They really are in big accounts, and they're sort of like going there and they're sort of like repeatedly having a flywheel almost within a single organization. And this might be a slide that some of you are familiar with. This is the slide that we use for using for MAP. Normally there's a big commercial slide as well. We get some constraints when we've got like an open audience. We can't share all our numbers, but there are other ways of sharing that with you. But effectively, when we come into the world of MAP, it has to be of a certain size in terms of deal, but then we're funding all of these exercises, right? We're really taking it to the point where you should be in a situation where it's a zero cost change for your customer. And what that really means is that you're no longer trying to persuade them to spend money, you're actually trying to persuade them to change. So then you're moving into a value-based discussion about what is the benefit of moving to the cloud. Much more optimistic, much more progressive thinking. Now, it varies through here, and I often see, so I get to see like a lot of partners, and even the very, very best, touch on small parts of this slide, right? don't see, so what I'm saying to you, honestly, is there is room to super excel in this space. I see a lot of people doing the TCO and the rapid discovery. That's great. We have this thing called a migration readiness assessment. It's an application. It's online. It's available to partners, and it's a guided workshop with a customer. The objective is to sort of see how ready they are and look at the things that are of most warning. We made it mandatory when it was years ago because we had a lot of customers going through their very first migration, and partners were reluctant to do it. They didn't really like doing it, if I'm brutally honest with you. And what I rarely ever saw was the fact that they would then address the outcomes of the assessment with some of these accelerators that we've got. So sometimes people do have genuine concerns like security, or they don't know how to run their workloads once they've moved to the cloud, or there's some compliance concerns that they've got. And then we've designed all these accelerators which are specifically targeted at these particular objections. And when we're talking about clinching the deal earlier, these are the things that we have to deploy. So again, I see partners inventing all of this stuff and getting ready for it and trying to address it when it already exists, right? And it's really good quality and we use it very regularly. So what I'm saying is there's stacks of stuff in here that is really useful. We have this other thing, how are we doing for time? I've got 40 minutes, we're near the end. We have this thing called prescriptive guidance, right? It's a library of migration motions which are really granular. So you could go like a SQL Server to Aurora or something like that. And you can go there and it will tell you precisely how we would advise that you do that particular migration. And then what I see is like partners writing it up themselves. It's like, you don't need to. And I see some partners are getting there and they're putting Gen AI on top of this stuff. So they're improving their response to tenders, they're rating prescriptive guidance, they're folding that into their own content, and they're improving the speed and the quality of what they're submitting to customers. And they're taking cost out of their business, lowering their cost of sales. It's not happening a lot, right? So there's still stacks of things to harness. They've got nothing to do with all the financial support, just the assets that are available for partners to make the most of their customer engagements. And that goes all the way through there in terms of like technologies for deploying landing zone and giving advice there. There's so much really, really rich content that I would always advise our partners to really sort of like dive into so they can get the most out of it. Okay, right, so this is the final one. I wanted to just recap on some of the things that we talked about there. So the financial impact that Migration Acceleration Program is massive. And maybe to save my blushes, but I'll try to say something pretty bold. I don't think in the history of any industry do you see what AWS is doing with this program. I think if you think back and say, and catch me out like at the end when I'm off camera, but can you think of an example where, like, when I was learning to drive the first time, I never had an automotive company come up to me and say, I'll pay for your lessons. I've never had a landlord come to me and say, hey, I'd like you to move into my flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pay for all of your costs of moving, and then you can just come into my flat. If you think about maybe a telephone, then what they do, but they tend to just amortize it, and then they lock you into a contract, or a broadband, it's the same thing. They lock you in so that you're really just financing an upfront purchase. If you look at what we're doing here, and again, if you can think of an example of another industry that does it or has done it in the past, I'd love to hear it. But that is what AWS is doing. It's saying, like, we're going to take these costs out of the equation. We're going to take it out of the conversation so you can just concentrate on a discussion with the customer about the value of moving. And that's what AWS, and that's what the A in Migration Acceleration Program's all about, is accelerating those decisions, which we think are good for you, because then that's how you can get access to your services contract. The other things that we've been doing in this program, and this is again about the flywheel, and I say these things, right, because I see all the time, if I had $1 for every time a partner said to me, oh yeah, I know Matt, I'd be like, blimey, I've been at the company 7 years and I learn something new every day, and this person I'm talking to is like emphatic about how well they know it. But then I go and see, I get called into situations where there was one recently in Asia Pacific where the customer couldn't believe the pricing that one of the partners had put on the table. Couldn't believe it. They said that can't be true. All the other partners didn't use any of that. And we had to go back and validate that the one partner had done it correctly, and they had. And the others hadn't done it correctly, and they just by not really working hard enough about thinking about the commercials, they were actually like leaving money on the table that we would have provided for that deal. So super important to like understand this and then execute with it. And that's where we have all of these other benefits, like, you know, if it's a greenfield account, we put a little bit more money into those. We put a bit more money to tease the notion that we want to do modernization. So we're trying to get that conversation going to support you on larger contracts. VMware, Keith's already talked about how important that is, and you know, the clear show of hands that you all had told us that, you know, you're hearing that as well. We started introducing only this year some other things. So we've always had the mental model that what we should be doing is we should be like eliminating the bubble costs of change to accelerate the decision. But for the first time this year, we actually said, hey, no, we'll put some extra rewards to the partner. So we'll have greater advocacy with our partners. That's new, first time we've done that. And then we've also said, hang on, we don't just want to pay and incentivize that you come onto our service, but we want you to take the partners' managed services as well. We want to encourage that, because what we were seeing is that there was a concern about adoption because they don't know how to run things. So we want to make sure that our partners are giving, like, you know, benefits in order to actually sell their managed services as well. So it's a triple win. So loads of stuff going on with MAP as well, and this is all about developing that level of sophistication so you can roll through deals. It helps you to learn these other things. We have like pricing calculators. These are sort of techniques that you need to learn. We obviously have to, like, you know, we're often signing off large sums of money, so there's checklists that we need to be familiar with. Customers have to sign stuff off. We want to know that they're happy that you've like moved them. So there's little things like that. But again, as you build that mental muscle internally, this all becomes second nature, and you have this available. You do it with your teams. Those, I said it. I don't want to keep banging on, but the partners that I see that are standing on the stage have this absolutely licked. This is some of these elements, and that is why they're so successful. Let me just try and sort of summarize really about, so I got my team together, and we were whiteboarding out what does a good partner look like. And this is a compilation of different partners, right? But some of the traits that we see that are really effective. And then we kind of, and there's a lot of content on that slide, so I won't drain it all. But we looked across about pipeline, we looked about what they focus on, we look about how influential they are, and we look at the speed of their delivery. And then we asked ourselves the question, do we have data that you could actually measure that? And the answer is yes, actually. And then it does bear itself out when you look at the data. The speed of which they are through the process is really impressive. And that is partly because they've put a lot of effort in the alignment of all their teams. So there really is like a relay race, like the seamless handing of batons from one role to another through an organization. Improving that experience that we talked about earlier from the sales force, reducing that sort of like repeated nature and things like that. They're really slick at those things. Focus. I'm going to put up a link that you can see the ambassadors. This is in some organisation that our partners have. They make it mandatory. Every single employee has to go through the training that we have. And again, what that helps with is with the relationship with the account teams is there is common language between them. So they know precisely, they're talking exactly the same terms. That just helps with trust, it helps with speed, less confusion, and but it is an investment in time. Then there's a whole load of other things. We love feedback. We're definitely not perfect. There's loads that we've got, a long list of things that we want to improve, and we love it when our partners sort of like tell us that. It's not something that they either reinforces what we know and it maybe changes the priority, or it tells us something new, which is equally important. So yeah, we really appreciate when partners sort of like get to that level with us and they're telling us how we could do things better. And then also, you know, what I noticed with the account teams, and there's a lot of advocacy going with the account teams, is yes, they like the technical details, but they also need to get paid, they need to hit their targets, they're worried about their particular quotas. And these things really matter about like the speed onto like the starting with a quality team, clear about the scope, with executive engagement, like really basic things that they're really good at getting right, and also keen to getting money onto the platform. That is something that really is interesting to them. So and the way that they emphasize that as one of their best credentials is something that is really important. So anyway, that is us. That is how we're going to close. We did say that there was a few little calls to action, so I don't know if you want to take some photos, you're welcome to. But we've got 3 things that we think would be useful. The first is the training that I just referred to earlier, where I said, like, you know, some of our high-performing partners, they put everybody through it. Looks like everyone's done. The second is, like, this is like a reasonably large document. Like, it's all in there, right? We released it in 2024. Loads of details. I mean, people can reach out, but sometimes if you just want to be able to flick through something and get an answer, that is the document to download, definitely. And then finally, Keith touched on it earlier, the COE. Do you want to just explain what's here?
So the COE has a bunch of content about how to build a practice around migration, modernization in Partner Central, and so it helps you think about the workloads and gives you some prescriptive guidance, and it's a great place to get started. It's all on demand. As well as you can access through Partner Central. We have a bunch of campaigns preloaded in Partner Central for VMware, for modernization, for Microsoft. So a bunch of partner-ready campaigns available for you to download. And I don't know if there's a survey in the mobile app. Please take their survey. We'd really like a 5. Okay, if we're not worth a 5, let's be honest, but
I was thinking, I mean, if they've enjoyed it, they could take the service. But if you haven't enjoyed it, look, we've done enough of your time.
That's right.
Don't feel that you should.
That's right. We appreciate you. We'll be here around for Q&A if you guys have any questions. But thank you very much for taking the time to join our session today.
Thank you.